Hi, I'm Marco Rubio. As always, proud and honored to be your senator from Florida, serving you here in Washington, D.C. Well, Congress is out of recess and back at work here in Washington, and this is yet another installment of our Mailbox feature that we've been putting out for the last couple of months. Just to remind you, what we do is we go through our emails and our letters. We pick out 2 or 3 that are typical of some of the letters we've been getting. We read them on the air and we answer your questions so that you know that your letters and your emails are being written. And we encourage you to continue to send them because that feedback really helps to form, in our minds, what we should be focused on. So I picked 3 letters and I'll begin. One is from Albert, who lives in Lakewood Ranch, Florida, and it's regarding business and government reform. And he writes, "My wife and I own a small pre-employment testing company with 600 clients worldwide. Our business is down 45% from a high in 2008. In speaking with our clients on their employment plans, 90% are only planning on hiring replacement employees for those who retire or are fired. When asked why there's no expansion hiring, they all cite a recent increase in costly government regulations and an uncertain economic environment. If the government wants to promote job creation, have every regulatory agency review their regulations, discard those that no longer apply, that conflict with other regulations or impede job creation. Get government off our backs so we can put people to work." This kind of sentiment is what we've been getting from small business owners all across Florida, not just now, but during my campaign for the United States Senate. And there's a balancing act here. On the one hand, there is a need for government regulations. I mean, we want our water to be clean, we want our air to be breathable, we want our quality of life and our public safety to be protected. And this is the proper role of government. So there are regulations that are important, that need to exist, and we need to have in place. On the other hand, there are regulations that at some point seem to exist only to justify the existence of the regulators. Government begins to perpetuate these rules for ways that no one can really explain, and the result is disastrous. When you lose that balance between the proper role of government, what government should be doing, and what government should not be doing, the result is some of these things we're hearing about right now. And by the way, this is not a partisan issue. The president himself, in numerous speeches, has identified regulations as a problem in America. Unfortunately, his administration, in my opinion, has not followed through on reforming them. And even as we speak, in the month that we've been on recess, tons of new regulations have been put out by rulemaking authority that these agencies have here in Washington, D.C. So I hear this everywhere I go. I introduced a bill, or I co-sponsored a bill a few months ago called the REINS Act by Senator Rand Paul. And what it basically does is it requires that any regulations that would have X amount of money impact on, a determinate amount of money, a significant economic impact on economic growth and opportunity, would have to receive congressional approval and be reviewed by Congress. And the reason why is because of this letter. Because there are job creator after job creator all across Florida and quite frankly America that are telling us that these regulations are destroying their ability to create jobs. Our next letter comes from Dan in Jacksonville, Florida, and he writes, "I am a registered Republican and I am sick and tired of partisan politics being placed ahead of our nation's well-being. Support the president in extending the payroll tax cut, the rural construction bill, trade deals, and reform of the patent system. Jobs for the people are more important than partisan politics." Well, I agree about that. I don't think partisan politics should get in the way of jobs for people. In fact, the most important thing that our government should be focused on now is economic growth, growing our economy. Absolutely, our spending problems are real, but the #1 issue in America is job creation, the growth in our economy. Our debt stands in the way of job creation. Regulations stand in the way of job creation. But I think it's important to remind ourselves that government doesn't create private sector jobs. Jobs in the private sector are created by the private sector. What government can do is create an environment that encourages and incentivizes the private sector to have the confidence to create jobs in America. So you outlined a few things, like a payroll tax cut is not a bad idea. It's not necessarily a job creator per se unless it's made permanent. But what we really need, and these are none of the trade deals. I'm a big fan of trade deals. The president should submit them for approval to the Congress. He's still sitting on the trade deals. Reform of the patent system. I agree. Unfortunately, there's been some changes made to the reform of the patent system here that have no place being in the bill. But by and large, on the issue that you've outlined of partisanship getting in the way of creating an environment for job creation, I agree 100%. And what we need to do is get to some of the things that there's consensus on. What are those things? #1, we've got to bring America's debt under control, because this big debt scares investors. It scares people away from investing in America's economic future. And without those investments, you can't start businesses and you can't grow existing businesses. #2, regulatory reform. We cannot continue to allow the cost of regulations to strangle and destroy the ability of small businesses to grow and create jobs in our economy. And #3 is tax reform. We have a complicated and broken tax code, one that quite frankly discourages companies from building things here in America. We have to stop doing that. Tax reform, regulatory reform, get the debt under control. Those are the three big things we can do right now to create an environment where the job creators will start creating jobs. And in my opinion, none of those three issues should be partisan issues. They're common sense issues. And I'm looking forward to working with anybody who wants to work on those issues. Our last letter is from Vance in Tampa. And he writes, "I'd like to express my dismay for the apparent disregard by the U.S. Congress for the economic health of our country. I am disappointed that my representatives can't seem to grasp the degree of financial impact which results from failures to address budgetary issues in a timely manner. After more than 7 months of unemployment, I find the savings I rely upon for coverage of basic living expenses are becoming rapidly depleted, not from my consumption, but from my escalating depression and market conditions. Throughout my 38 years of employment, I have not endured more than 30 days of unemployment until now. I have never observed savings and investment values drop by more than 25% until now. I don't feel as though either my work ethic or commitment to savings has changed." Well, Vance, your frustration we hear all over Florida, and I share it. One of the things that shocked me when I first got here in January of this year as a new United States Senator is how come we didn't jump immediately onto these topics of the debt, of job creation, of economic growth. And we still haven't, if you look at it. I mean, the debt deal that was done at the end of July, it really doesn't solve the problem. And so one of the things I was surprised about is this lack of sense of urgency. Why was there no sense of urgency? Why didn't we start working on these issues right away, the next day, the first day of the Congress, the second day of the Congress? In fact, things allowed to linger for months. On many days here in the United States Senate, we were voting on nothing other than some judge appointments and some procedural motions. And it frustrated me to no end, and continues to frustrate me to no end. Partially, of course, because of the stories that you're telling, because I'm hearing this all over the state of Florida. But also because not only is the individual lives of individual people being dramatically impacted, but so is the future of our country. We're playing with fire here. These issues that our country's facing, particularly with the national debt, are not going to go away on their own. And their impacts are not exaggerated. Not only are they destroying our ability to grow our economy, in many ways, they will limit the ability of our children and grandchildren to inherit what we inherited, the greatest country in the history of the world. So I'll continue to do everything I can to hope to bring a sense of urgency to this issue. It still baffles me why it takes so long to get things done up here and why we're focused on other things when we should be focused on these things. I hope that I can make a difference, and I hope you'll continue to encourage us and hold us accountable in that regard. Well, those are the three letters for this week. I really appreciate all of your input. I'm asking you to continue to email us and send us your letters, and maybe the next time we do one of these, it'll be one of your emails or letter that we're reading on the air. Thank you again for all of your input, for all of your support. It's an honor and a privilege to represent you here in Congress. God bless all of you. God bless the United States.